sobre el agua, pero es muy humilde porque lo más importante es que él entiende lo más importante sobre el agua, que viene siendo el valor del agua. Y eso sí es algo que él se entiende muy bien. Sobre las estrategias y iniciativas que está haciendo la Junta de Agua aquí en Pares. Si se puede hacer una gráfica sobre enseñando las iniciativas que hace el Paso Water, y si la ponen las iniciativas de la Junta, van a ver que están juntas. Realmente el Paso Water estamos unos años adelantados, pero las estrategias, las iniciativas son iguales. Están en la proyección correcta para proteger el agua y para asegurar que nuestra comunidad tenga agua. Ahora, en el Paso, nosotros vemos el Paso Aguas como una comunidad. Socialmente hay muchas cosas que pasan que nos tratan de dividir, pero realmente somos una comunidad. Lo que pasa en el Paso afecta en Juárez, lo que pasa aquí en Juárez nos afecta en el Paso. Y eso es más verdad cuando viene sobre Juntos del Agua. Las dos comunidades usamos el hueco bolsón, lo tenemos que cuidar juntos. Estaba platicando con el licenciado Nevares que antes de la pandemia, 2 o 3 veces al año nos juntábamos para asegurar que la información del hueco bolsón estaba igual, no nomás sobre la cantidad de agua que se estaba bombeando, pero la calidad del agua, que es muy importante, que es otro asunto. Habiendo agua es una cosa, la calidad del agua es otra cosa también. Por mí, quiero dar las gracias a Coparmex por la invitación. A mí se me hace muy importante que sigamos platicando juntos sobre el asunto del agua, porque el valor pues, está bien alto. Sobre el valor y el pago de recibos, y son las cosas que también en el Paso tenemos los mismos problemas o opiniones, pero realmente si uno veía el agua realmente por el valor que tiene, si eran fuentes de oro, fuentes de petróleo, claramente nadie lo iba a gastar, nadie lo va a gastar. Y por eso se necesita el agua para sacar el oro y para sacar el petróleo. O sea, hasta más importante viene siendo el agua. En el Paso, algo lo que sí la gente de nuestra comunidad, que estamos comunicando bastante con ellos, es el valor del agua. Que no se debe de gastar, y una gota de agua se debe de usar varias veces. Y la historia de agua en el Paso ha sido de cómo proteger las fuentes de agua potable, pero realmente el futuro del Paso es usar la agua y una gota de agua varias veces. Y por eso estoy aquí hoy para hablar de la planta Fred Herbie, que es una iniciativa que tenemos sobre el uso de agua. Voy a platicar un poquito más sobre el futuro de cómo vamos a reusar agua varias veces, porque no se debe de gastar, no se debe de usar solamente una vez. Con eso les despido otra vez. Muchas gracias por la invitación. Voy a hacer lo mejor para dar respuestas de las preguntas en español, pero les pido su paciencia conmigo. La presentación sí va a ser en inglés, pero algo que sí les prometo es que mis palabras, como son muy simples, el mensaje va a ser bien claro, porque no tengo las palabras para usar muchas, para decir dar una respuesta muy larga. Va a ser muy claro mi respuesta sobre el tema de agua. Con eso le cambio a inglés y voy a comenzar con la presentación. In El Paso, we use 39 billion gallons of water in a day. We have 3 different sources of water that we rely on. The Hueco Bolsón, 46%. Water from the Rio Grande at 31, and the Mesilla Bolsón at 23. When there isn't water in the Rio Grande, then we make it up using the Hueco Bolsón. So the importance of the Hueco Bolsón is front and center for us in El Paso, just the way it is for Ciudad. We have to protect the Hueco Bolsón at all costs. This is a map of the wells that we have around El Paso. The red dots are the water wells that we have in the Hueco Bolson. The yellow dots are the wells in the Mesilla Bolson. And we have 2 drinking water plants that clean river water in El Paso. And the big yellow dot is the desalination plant where we also clean and desalt water from the Hueco Bolson. And the main strategy in El Paso is to protect the fresh water in the Hueco Bolson. So we are now treating salty water from the Hueco Bolson so that we can protect the fresh water that we have in the Hueco Bolson. We have multiple sources of water, the 2 aquifers, Mesilla, Hueco, river water, the salty water in the Hueco Bolson, but we also rely on purple pipe water from the reclaimed water system, the recycled water system, and we have the Aquifer Replenishment Project, which I'm going to talk about today with the Fred Hervey plant. And of course, a very strong conservation program, just as Ingeniero Alejandro was talking about, being able to reduce the consumption of water from each person. Right now in El Paso, we are at 131 gallons per person per day. 131 gallons per person per day, which is much more than what the average resident uses here in Ciudad Juarez. So credit to Ciudad Juarez for having such a low consumption per person. El Paso would only wish that we would have our consumption that way. The story of El Paso has been reused, but the future of El Paso is much more water recycling. Again, I talked about using, in my introduction, using water as many times as possible. That's the future of water. Licenciado Nevares said, el agua es agua. And he's absolutely right. Water is water. Somebody asked about finding more potable water. Water is water. And in El Paso, one of the things that we're changing with our customers is to just view water as being water. Not potable water, not sewer water, not storm water, water. And from a technical standpoint, it's true. H2O, one water molecule. Water is water. All the things that make a water dirty can be removed. Technology lets us remove it, leaving us with a water molecule safe to drink. So it's this messaging that we have and are doing with our customers in El Paso so they can see it, and we're seeing success with it, where people in El Paso just care about water. They just care about water. Are we going to have water? We can say, yes, we're going to have water in El Paso. I think if people say, are we running out? Are we going to have potable water? Well, if you start to want to just talk about one little part of water, clean, fresh water from an aquifer, yeah, if you don't take care of it, you're going to run out of water. But water as a whole, if people just care about water, there's plenty of water here. There's plenty of water. So the story of El Paso is reuse, and it's an evolution over time. I think the history of communities in the world start with disposal. People would use water one time, throw the sewage water into a river, into the creek, and off it goes. With time, you evolve water reclamation. El Paso is there. Ciudad Juarez is there with recycled water, purple pipe systems. The Fred Hervey plant that I'm here to talk about talks about aquifer replenishment. So taking water that's been used and put it back into the aquifer so that it can be used again, and then you start the cycle. This water that we put into the aquifer gets picked up by our drinking water wells. Gets picked up by our drinking water wells, and it goes to our customers. And then finally, at the very end of the presentation, the ultimate stage of water recycling, which we call advanced water purification, which is connecting our sewage treatment plants, cleaning the water from our sewage plants, sending it to another plant, making it drinking water, and then it goes straight to our distribution system, straight to our customers. So again, the ultimate form of reuse, closing that loop, not putting it in the aquifer, although we'll keep doing it, but completely closing the loop, that's the future. And this is why we say we're not going to run out of water in El Paso, because all this water, we're just going to keep recycling. it's worth too much. The value is too high to use it one time. So our water reuse effort started in the 1960s. We started with just sending treated, clean wastewater to Ascarate Golf Course. And then in the 1990s, we built the purple pipe system in El Paso. 50 miles of purple pipe system on the west side, the east side of El Paso, along with 10 pump stations. Just like you all, we clean the wastewater to a standard where it can be used in golf courses, parks, industrial parks, schools. This is what we use this water for. Now, the next step in evolution, aquifer replenishment. So, the regulations in the United States have us, in order to replenish the aquifer, we have to clean that wastewater to a drinking water standard. So we already have wastewater plants that create a drinking water. And if you go to the Fred Hervey plant, which I would love to take you all to, you go to that plant, the water comes in black, it's wastewater. At the end, it's drinking water, and I love to drink that water at the very end. It's water. Water's water. And every time I go, I like to drink it to make a point. This strategy helps us stabilize groundwater levels. So in the wiggle bolson, you pump, the groundwater levels are going to go down. What we saw with this project is that when we replenish water back into the wiggle bolson, we stabilize these we stabilize the water levels in the wiggle bolson, which is good. Strategy to protect the wiggle bolson from dropping at all costs. This project has shown we've stabilized groundwater levels in the wiggle bolson. And of course, improve the water quality. In El Paso, you have the mountain. And closer to the mountain is the fresh water. As you get further away, it gets saltier and saltier and saltier. If we keep pumping water, just fresh water, all that salty water keeps coming in. So this is also another strategy, is to protect the quality of the water in the wiggle bolson. So the project that I'm talking about today is in northeast El Paso. If you're familiar with El Paso, you take Highway 54 straight out of El Paso towards New Mexico. Our plant is there in that area. So the drinking water that we create from the Fred Hervey plant, it's also used for industrial cooling. I have a graph here later on, but El Paso Electric uses our drinking water from this facility for cooling water purposes. So they generate electricity in El Paso using our recycled water. We also use it, there's a golf course in northeast El Paso, Painted Dunes Golf Course uses this water as well. And although by law, you'll go to Painted Dunes and by law you'll see the purple pipe signs, but it's drinking water. It's drinking water. By every single parameter, it's drinking water, but by law, they have us call it purple pipe, but it is drinking water. So we use it also for turf irrigation and for the golf course. But a big use, the main use, inject the aquifer. Second use, cooling water to produce energy by El Paso Electric. Obviously, they pay us for this water just like any other. Through any other meter, just like we would anything else. Since 1985, when this project started, we've created 26 billion gallons of this water, and we've re-put it back into the wiggle bolson. 26 billion gallons. This is the only project in the state of Texas where a community takes what was a wastewater, a black water, that gets treated to drinking water and gets put back into the aquifer. There's other parts in the state they use river water, but we're the only one in Texas that we start with a wastewater and we create a drinking water, we put it back into the ground. I say Texas because California does this quite a bit. California, Orange County is most famous for it. They do this quite a bit. The Fred Hervey Water Reclamation Plant, before this plant, we just had ponds. Just from an evolution standpoint, very low on the evolution scale. We would get our black water, collect it for wastewater, put it in a pond, aerate it, let it evaporate away. In 1985, as Northeast El Paso grew, we said, let's do something better with this water. There has to be something better. This plant is 20 miles from the Rio Grande, so to build a pipeline down the middle of El Paso, down to the river, to discharge it and get rid of it and only use it one time made no sense. So in 1985, we were saying there has to be something better we can do with this valuable resource that we have. Let's recharge the aquifer, and that's what gave birth to the Fred Harvey Water Reclamation Plant. We built it in 1985, 10 million gallons per day. And I want to say 2010, we added 2 more million gallons per day. So right now, it can treat up to 12 million gallons per day. The Fred Harvey plant. This shows exactly what I've been talking about. This one plant is 2 plants in one. But when you go out there, you can't even tell the difference. You have the wastewater treatment part of the plant, and from one pipe to the next, from one big tank to the next tank, we start the drinking water part of the plant. So 2 plants in one, goes from wastewater to what I would say is like a river water quality, and then that immediately goes into the drinking water plant. At the end of this plant as a whole, you have drinking water. We have drinking water. And then we use it to inject it back into the aquifer. So you can see the original oxidation ponds, that big area there, that was the old ponds. We would just put all the wastewater there. You can see the plant where it is now. So how do we put the water into the aquifer? So this has been a journey as well, and we've learned a lot, something that we would love to share. I think as Juárez continues to go in their trajectory, just like how we are, a lot of things to learn so you guys don't have to go through this. So injection wells. So at the time in 1985, the way to put water back into the aquifer was through a well. And you would pump the water into the well. And then that's how you would introduce the water into the aquifer. So we started with 10 wells located about no more than 2 miles from the Fred Harvey plant. You can see up here where the power producing plant is. El Paso Electric has their plant over there. So all the water that was being cleaned at Fred Harvey, we would inject it, and the rest we would send to El Paso Electric. So what we learned when we built this plant is mechanical injection doesn't work very well. It doesn't work very well. It's complicated, it's expensive. The wells screens clog up, they corrode. So not long after we put this plant into operation and was introducing water into the aquifer, we said there has to be a better way to do this. This is just a figure of what mechanical injection looks like. There is a pump, you force the water into the aquifer, you replenish the aquifer. Pretty simple. On average, each well, about 700 gallons per minute, roughly 1 million gallons per day. That's what we were getting, or wanted to get from this method of putting water into the aquifer. Through a research foundation, something that is, I think, very valuable to water is research. A lot of research. El Paso Water does a lot of research in terms of trying to figure out a way to better do things with water. The Water Research Foundation, we did a study with them just to see what other ways can we introduce water into the aquifer that is not so complicated, but we can still put as much water as we need to on a regular basis. So there's 2 different methods that we looked at. So one of them was a dry well, what we call a dry well. So let's not put the well all the way to the aquifer, not all the way to the water table. Let's stop somewhere in the dry zone. There's no water there. Just put it in and let it spread. So we'll put the water in using gravity, no more pumps, just using gravity, and let the water, let's give it a head start. Let's just get it about some depth and let it spread. Just let it spread, let it make its way down to the aquifer. So we studied that. We saw that it didn't work very well. So through this method, the most we could put in is 130 gallons per minute. You can see mechanical injection was 700. We need 700. So 130 just didn't work. This just did not work. So luckily, Oh, this is a picture of a dry well. This is what they look like above ground. So again, just through gravity. Dry well, just through gravity. So then we looked at, so last thought on the dry well. You don't need a lot of land for them. The spacing doesn't need to be a lot, so that was an advantage. You do need to get the well past any clay or any caliche layer that there is in that area, so that's something we had to learn to make sure that the water can make through all that. But even getting through that, it didn't spread, it didn't recharge the aquifer. Why? I couldn't tell you. I'm like, in this case, I'm like, Licenciado Nevares, I don't know. I don't know the technicalities of it. It just didn't work. But thank God it didn't work, because then the other one that we tried, infiltration basins, even simpler. So this is a case where simple was even better. The basin, you cut past, dig the pond or the basin through the caliche layer, through the clay layer. Simple, just dig a pond, introduce the water into it, and off it goes. And amazingly, the geology liked this. We put the water in, it goes right into the aquifer, all the way in. We had the monitoring wells, that's how we know that we're recharging the aquifer, it works. So luckily, easiest was better. But the geology matters.
One question, in this case, it was going through clay and caliche? Or?
No, we cut through the clay.
Okay.
So we got through. So it's just sand. We just got to the sand. We just got to the sand. And it just sucks it right in. It sucks it right in, and we see the levels rebound and stabilize. So simpler was better. And this is what we do now. This is a picture of one of those ponds right now. We're introducing the water into the pond. Here's another one. Simple, simple. We have different ponds because we don't want the water sitting there too long because it starts to evaporate. So we built different ponds so that as soon as we put it in, we can see it. We can see it go. It takes not even hours. You'll surprise. It takes minutes. You see this full of water, but you let it sit there for 10, 15 minutes and it goes away. So no evaporation. It's amazing how well this works. Just a sidebar, the geology is the most important part. It accepts the water, it recharges the aquifer, it's good. It's finding that geology where in Ciudad Juárez, would you be able to do something like this? That's the study. For me, that should be done. Well, and try the dry wells. Maybe the dry wells work here too. The ponds, mechanical injection, there's ways to do it, but recharging the aquifer is, to me, is a very important strategy. So again, the results of this research, dry well didn't work for us. Mechanical injection we saw was expensive and was difficult to operate and maintain. What we call the spreading basin, cheap and easy. By the grace of God, it works. And it works very well. So again, different basins. Again, this is the same figures before, but this is where we have the basins. This is where, through a lot of geologic study, this is exactly where we have to put these. So we did a lot of study. And they just happen to be in this part of Northeast El Paso. These are our basins. And we deliver water to the basins, and then again, as you can see, the power plant, El Paso Electric Power Plant is up there as well. And we still deliver water to them. Fred Hervey on an annual basis. So every year is producing about 2 billion gallons of water from Fred Hervey of drinking water. That was once wastewater, I want to make that clear. 40% goes to El Paso Electric. Again, they need water. We don't want them using Pueblo Bolsón water. We want them using this recycled water instead. Again, because it's drinking water, the chemistry, they don't care. Water's water, and it works well. The basins, recharging the Pueblo Bolsón, 43% goes to the basins. Again, and then the golf course. The injection wells, we have 2 injection wells that we kept. The mechanical injection wells, we kept 2 of them. We still use those just to keep them going over time. But they're not the normal. We use them just in case, or just to make sure they keep working if we ever need them for whatever reason. So the next step after these basins. So these basins, as you saw, they're not the nicest looking basins. Or holes in the ground, we put water in them. The next step is more water. How can we put even more water into the Hueco Bolsón? So that's the strategy. Now that we know that we can, We ran out of wastewater. If we had more wastewater, we'd be putting all the wastewater into it. So we're looking for more water. So because we have rights to water in the Rio Grande, all that water, we don't use it all because the majority is during the summertime. So when we get water in April or May, the demand's not there, so the water in the river is just passing us. So in the non-peak months, so when it's not the summer, in the spring and in the fall, we have water rights. We want to use all that river water, clean it to drinking water, and we're going to send it to our ponds. So let's inject river water, cleaned river water, into the Hueco Bolson. So that's the strategy that we call the enhanced arroyo, because now we need a lot more ponds. So instead of having more of these ponds, what can we do to give us a really big surface area to inject all this water in? And I'm going to speed up because I've got 5 minutes. So again, water rights to the river. We have almost 23 billion gallons of water rights to the Rio Grande. The most we've ever used from the Rio Grande is the 19.5 billion. That's the most we've ever used. That's not what we get every year. It depends on how much it rains, snowpack, all of that. But the key here is using or building a long, skinny basin instead of smaller basins. Let's do one long one and put the water in there so that it can infiltrate into the river. But now we've got a lot of water now. So these little basins aren't going to work. We're still in northeast El Paso. We found an arroyo that gets water. Water comes down the mountain. We found an arroyo. We're going to dig the arroyo out, get past the clay, get past the caliche, and now we have a really long area that we can put this water into, and that's the plan. Again, these forums are important because we learn from each other. We learn from Albuquerque. This is something Albuquerque, New Mexico is doing. This is their enhanced arroyo. They're doing the same thing. They're taking river water from the Rio Grande and putting it into their groundwater aquifer. But this is what theirs looks like. When it's flowing and they've got a lot of river water, they've created something that looks nice and anemone for the community, but at the end, all this water makes it into their aquifer. So we got the idea from them. Here's another example of what Albuquerque is doing. It's the same arroyo that they're using. I don't think ours is going to look exactly like this, but this is our plan. We are building this right now in northeast El Paso. You can go out there and see this enhanced arroyo that we're doing. Again, from river water allotments, our strategy, the plan, is to put more water into the Hueco Bolson. Once this project is all the way done, you can see the majority of the water that we put into the Hueco is going to be river water. When we have a full allocation of river water, most of it is going to be river water. We have, and then we will also be putting water from the Fred Hervey plant. So now we have Fred Hervey plant water, and we have river water. And of course, we'll always keep sending water to El Paso Electric. Protect the Hueco Bolson as much as possible. We don't want them using potable water from the ground. And my last slide here is the ultimate form of water recycling, advanced water purification. So this closes the loop. So instead of treating water at a wastewater plant and then putting it into the ground, and then we've ran the studies. After we put the water into the ground from Fred Hervey, it takes about 5 years before we see it come through a production well, and then it goes to our customers. So we have to wait 5 years before we see this water. This next project closes the loop. We're going to go from the wastewater plant to a advanced purification plant to create drinking water, and then that goes straight into our tanks, into our pipes, straight to our customers. Closed loop water recycling. You can't do any more water recycling close than this. This is it. And this is where we're headed. The key is treatment, convincing people that it's safe, multiple treatment processes. In this case, we're using membrane filtration, ultraviolet light, the carbon filters, and then chlorine to disinfect. Overkill. But this is what we need to do. First, to get a permit from EPA. But this makes people feel good. From a technical standpoint, you don't need this much treatment. Reverse osmosis will do it. But to make people feel better, you put on all this other treatment behind it to ensure pathogens are gone, chemical contaminants are gone, anything that could be in a wastewater. Very basic schematic of what the plant, of what this project is. Our Bustamante plant down in Isleta it discharges into the canal right now, just like you all. We just put it back into the canal, off it goes to the farmers. We're going to take 10 million gallons of that, treat it to drinking water, and it goes straight to our customers. Water is water. And this is my last slide. With that, we have to answer any questions. As best I can in Spanish, but I may have mixed in some English. Adelante.
El proyecto es sustentable, o sea, todo lo que implica llegar a esta tecnología, hacer todo esto, o sea, con lo que cobras, ¿alcanzan a pagar todo eso?
So no, I'm gonna say no. So even in our case, where the average bill is $70, average water bill in El Paso is $70. It's still not enough. So it's still not enough to pay for these projects. These projects are expensive. They cost a lot of money. Not only to build, but to maintain and to operate them. And the expertise you need to operate them as well. So we use grants, federal grants, state grants, help us build these projects. And we charge our customers for this service, but I can tell you, it's still not enough. We would have to raise our bills more to be able to break even. But these are expensive projects. You got to pay.
How much more will you have to increase the price?
So right now, in the last 9 years, we've raised our rates for the last 9 years because we have our messaging, our communication to our customers is that we have to raise rates to make sure that their water projects that we need to do get done. But to answer your question, we've raised our rates over the last 10 years. What is it? At least 20%. Last year we raised it 9%. We have a water rate in the bill. We have a wastewater rate in the bill. Our wastewater rate last year, I believe, raised 15%. We're gonna have another like 20% this year. It's expensive, but the value, and I think that's the communications we're having with our customers.
You've been doing an amazing job with all the water purification system, but we know that Potabilización is a shared water resource between El Paso and Ciudad Juárez. I have the question that if the use of the water from this part of the border in Ciudad Juárez doesn't affect the work that are you doing there in El Paso. And first one, if you have a strategy to have this under control, and if not, won't be cost effective to make a plan together to work with this issue?
So that's an excellent question and an excellent point. So the usage, the pumpage from Juárez has affected us in El Paso. There's wells that we have along the river that we've lost. We've completely lost. The water levels have gone lower than what our well screening is at. The quality of the water has changed a lot. All the wells we have along the river, they've become salty on us as well, so the water quality is important as well. The wells along the river, for us, we've put reverse osmosis treatment systems on those wells. So although some we've lost completely because the water quality's gotten really bad, right now we're in the process. We have wells with reverse osmosis systems on them so we can keep using them. But we're adding, there's another set of wells that have gone bad on us from a water quality standpoint. Right now we're putting on 15 more reverse osmosis systems on our water wells in the valley. So it has affected us, but I'll say this, I say this with a lot of pride actually, instead of complaining about it and saying you guys need to stop pumping, we'll just put in the reverse osmosis systems and keep using it. Plain and simple. Again, one, we understand the situation here in our communities. There's no sense in complaining about it. We understand what everyone's going through. We just put in the reverse osmosis systems and keep using the water. The suggestion of one plant. So I'll just say that those types of projects are being conceived and we are thinking about it. Joint funding through the NAP Bank is a great way of doing it. But for sure, shared resource, shared plant is for sure on the table. That's something that we are interested in and we would absolutely pursue. We love to pursue with La Junta, with Conagra, with, I'm not sure on the agency, but yeah, it's on the table. It makes a lot of sense to do it.
Thank you.
I have a question regarding your aquifer replenishment. Sorry. What kind of problems are you expecting to find out in the future? Because there is one right now, they are suffering in Santa Teresa area about the concentration of arsenic due to the distillation process in the basins. It's a huge problem. And we have to deal with that right away. And I think the procedures were just mentioned or projected, they will have that kind of problems in the future. Or perhaps you have it right now. And what are your strategies to implement in the future? And the second question is, how much does it cost? To give us an idea, because here in Mexico, looks like everything is expensive. That's not right. You have to deal with the problem with the right economic projection. Ultrafiltration, filter systems, activated carbon, chlorination, all these stages in the clean process water, how much does it cost? Because that's what Paris needs right now. To have a really good idea how much does it cost clean water. Because saying that it's going to cost in the future, that's for a fact. But we have to have a real projection. How much does it cost and deal with that in the future? Right now. Be prepared for the future. Even though you say that those stages are not needed, I'm pretty sure they are needed. Because one is the quality, the chemical water, quality of the water, and the other one is the bacterial load in the water, the microbial load. That's why you need these stations to clean up the water. Ultrafiltration is a good procedure, reverse osmosis is great, but you need the rest. And guarantee the quality of the water for the consumer. Because we are facing the problem in Santa Teresa. A huge amount of arsenic in the water because of this lixiviation problem.
So I'll take the first one with arsenic. So different parts of the aquifer have different water qualities, like I mentioned. So the arsenic issue that Santa Teresa has, we have as well. You pump water out of Mesilla Bolson, there's arsenic.
Yeah.
Naturally occurring through the geology, there's arsenic, you've got to remove it. So treatment, we have a treatment plant that removes the arsenic. There's just no way around it. The Hueco Bolson, what we've seen, different wells in the Hueco Bolson produce water with arsenic as well. We have treatment systems at each one of those wells to remove the arsenic. We have ion exchange systems that remove the arsenic before we send it to our customers. At the Fred Herbie plant, so that sewer shed, we talk about the sewer shed, so the community, the part of the community that feeds wastewater to Fred Herbie, that part of the community uses mostly just the fresh water from the Hueco Bolson. Fresh water, no arsenic issues, no salt issues, which is why we've been able to do what we do. So at Fred Herbie, there's a lot of the disinfection. We use ozone is a big part, is really the heart of the disinfection, along with chlorine, but ozone is used at Fred Herbie. But no arsenic issues, and of course these water quality parameters we're always tracking, but there is no arsenic issue in Fred Herbie, which is why we can do what we do as simple as we do it. But arsenic, if you have an arsenic issue, remove it, ion exchange, you just can't get around it. And the next part of your question is the cost of this water. So I was looking through my notes here. It's in dollars per gallon. But in El Paso, the cost for us to pump water, well, fresh groundwater, pump it, chlorine, and to our customers, 78 cents per 1,000 gallons. 78 cents. So not even $1. 78 cents. So again, talking about how much water should cost, it doesn't sound expensive. 78 cents for 1,000 gallons. Fresh, clean groundwater. Surface water, water from the Rio Grande, costs us $1.05 per 1,000 gallons. $1.05. Desalination, King Bailey Hutchison, the desalination plant, that is $1.53. $1.53 per 1,000 gallons. Groundwater replenishment, the Fred Hervey plant. Fred Hervey plant, wastewater to drinking water and using our funds to inject it, $1.82 per 1,000 gallons. Advanced water purification, as we're going through these different water recycling strategies, is going to be $1.51 per 1,000 gallons. I should have said, this is O&M, this is operation and maintenance. We track operation and maintenance. Capital, one-time cost, you pay it off. This is operation and maintenance, because this is the majority of the cost that gets passed over to our customers. And then importation, so as earlier, talking about finding more potable water. Finding more potable water. That by far is the most expensive thing you can do, which is why we have a strategy, but we hope to never do it. Which is why it's better to think, and it's cheaper to think for customers that water is water. The sooner you get to water is water, the better for customers and their water bill and for your pocket. Groundwater importation, if we ever do our project in El Paso, $4 per 1,000 gallons. $4. Which is almost three times any of our water recycling projects, 3 times any of our desalination projects. Finding more potable water is the most expensive thing you do. And that makes projects hard to do. That's why projects don't get done. That's really expensive. But paying for water is the key. People got to pay for water, the value as close as possible. We get kickback too. Water, Paso Water, raising rates again. Well, when something is valuable as water, it's our job to make sure, just as Licenciado Nevada said, to take care of it as much as possible. Everything helps. Everything helps when it comes to protecting water. But the sooner a community can get to understanding that water is water, there's technologies to clean it, make it safe, regardless of what the quality is, too salty, too much arsenic, chemical contaminants that industry could be putting into it. There's technology to clean it, but it costs. Average water bill in El Paso, like I mentioned, $70 a month. $70 a month. But we have different tiers. The more you use, the more you pay. The more you use, the more you pay. But people, you gotta charge and collect, because that's the only way you're gonna keep these projects going. And that's why you don't run out of water. And that's why you don't have to go find more water, because that's the most expensive thing you can do. Use it as many times as you can.
Tenemos una pregunta del público. ¿Qué tanta reserva tenemos en el bolsón del Hueco y Mesilla, que son los que compartimos con el Paso, dado que en esta región no hay casi lluvias?
So, I'll answer it this way. Because in El Paso, with the Hueco Bolsón, like I mentioned, closer to the mountain, fresh water. But as you go away from the mountain out into the desert, there really is generations worth of water. The water's there, salty, and it gets saltier and saltier, which means we just have to desalt it. From El Paso standpoint, we plan to desalt. We have plans right now. It's a whole other presentation, but we have another plan to build another desalination plant in El Paso to meet our needs. So in terms of reserves in the Hueco Bolsón, I'm going to say the water's there. It's salty, and the further you have to get out of town, so you have to desalt it and bring it in, but at least it's still, you can manage that. But the conservation programs you're doing, smart metering, leak detection, you got to do all of that too. That's how you defer these projects more and more into the future. But we tell people the water's here. You pump it from the Hueco Bolsón every single day, but to only use it one time, that's not the best use of such a valuable resource. So a lot of water recycling, Hueco Bolson future desalination, the water's there. I tell folks, when I look at Ciudad Juarez, and engineers here from La Junta, they see it too. It's a big portion of the Mesilla Bolson, big, like much more than what we have. From a treatment standpoint, if the arsenic issue is still there, the further you go down, I'm gonna say arsenic is easy to remove. It's not that hard. It's not expensive to remove. You don't need membranes. You don't need high pressure systems. It's relatively simple to remove. The Mesilla Bolson's there. I just don't see. I don't see that happening in Juarez. Hueco Bolson's big, desalted. The strategies are there, but I think to support what Licenciado Nevares was saying, yeah, you gotta collect. Gotta collect to build these projects. Don't rely on, although we do apply for grants, we don't always just rely on federal grants. People have to see the value of the water. They have to see it.
Muchas gracias. Queremos agradecer mucho su participación. Agradecemos mucho que esté el día con nosotros. A nombre de Potabilización, le damos un pequeño reconocimiento al ingeniero Gilberto Trejo. Muy amable, ingeniero.
Gracias. Muchas gracias.